this webinar is all about that tech. So it's the equipment, the software. We're going to talk about from top of the line to cheap solutions to making use of what you have. Don't wait. Just do it with what you have. The important thing is to stay connected. Software, some of you have heard about needing to use a mixing or editing software, things that you can do as far as interaction scheduling, and then podcasting. Maybe we'll have a little bit about that. Definitely talk about the internet and bandwidth, online giving options, and website stuff like embedding videos and giving buttons, which isn't even just website stuff. That's also in social media. And then a quick reminder, this webinar is being recorded and it will be offered both at dseumc.org/worship-online and on the Western Jurisdiction Facebook group called Online Worship. That is a closed Facebook group, so you'll need to request to become a member on that. All right, so let's go back to our Zoom and...
Christina, do you see Tom's note in the chat?
Oh, sorry, thank you. What is the note?
Is he one of our panelists? He's having a technical issue.
Tom, no. Try to log in as a pet. Oh, thanks, Tom. Actually, Tom was a panelist in yesterday's conversation, and there was some confusion because he registered for this one, so I moved him up as panelist, and then we realized, oh, no, that was for yesterday. So thank you for coming and joining us, Tom. You're all set. Let's go ahead and move along. So with the equipment, that's where we're going to start out. The average professional-like setup can cost between $1,000 to $5,000, I'm sure more. But if you're trying to provide a professional-looking service, the first thing to do before you start buying any equipment, because we're getting lots of questions of what do you recommend for a tripod? What do you recommend for a camera? And all this. It really depends on the software you're going to use. So check out the streaming services recommendation on their website. In some occasions, like for Zoom, they'll even explain to you what the requirements are for your computer that you're using to stream, what the requirements are for the up and down load speeds. So they give you a clearer idea of the equipment needs. And yeah, so take a look at that before you go and buy anything. But so Don Downen, good morning. He does kind of a one-man show to record and stream services anywhere. He's not restricted to what's happening in the the sanctuary, and with the possibility of being in total lockdown or whatever might happen in the future. This is a really important topic to discuss. He's helped us out of a jam for annual conference last summer, where we had an issue. We had professional equipment. We had a hired team that does this stuff, all over the country. And we were having problems with things like having a good internet signal. So with Don's setup, he was able to figure out a workaround for our internet access problems, and we ended up using some of his equipment. So Don, could you share with us a little bit about how your system works and what you would recommend for others?
Yes, good morning to everyone. I'm Don Downen. I'm a member of First United Methodist Church of Mesa. I look after their technology there. And I also run a little business on my own that live streams and video records weddings and funerals and memorial services. And I didn't have enough time to prepare. I just found out about this yesterday afternoon. So I don't have slides to show you of my equipment, but I'll describe it to you briefly. It's all on a tripod, a professional tripod. And that tripod can be planted anywhere on Earth that there is a decent 4G cellular signal. And on the tripod, you would see a professional Canon camera. I sure wish I had the slides prepared for this. Anyway, you'd see a professional Canon camera with an HDMI output, and that HDMI output goes directly to a streaming encoder. That's a small little box. those of you have heard of Teradek and their video. Yes, Christina.
Would you like me to share the images that you shared with me before? I can do that if you want.
Oh, yes, please.
Okay. But go ahead and keep going.
Okay. So as she puts them up, I'll just describe what you're looking at here. I wonder if I can mouse around on that. Can you see my mouse? No?
Yes, we
Okay.
can.
Oh, okay. It's a little white pointer. Okay. So this is everything is on this tripod, battery operated. Everything's operated with 3 car jump start batteries. They're very powerful. These are 18,000 milliamp hour batteries that will run. I can do a wedding for 8 hours nonstop. And here's up here's the camera. It has its own battery that's good for 4 hours. So I have some spare ones, and I have it set up with you can't see it, a little device down here where when the battery is getting weak up here, you can plug in another here and then plug in a third one up here. That gives you time to switch over without losing your stream. Up here, can you see my pointer?
I thought we could, but I think it's Christina's we see.
Okay. Anyway, if you look above the, yeah, you'll have to slide that down so we can talk about, there we go. Just above the camera, you see the little box right there, not that large LED light on top, but the little box, yes. That's what's called a Teradek Video Pro streaming encoder. And the way I use it is wirelessly via a hotspot to my phone. And I've had extremely good success with this, very, very few failures. It streams at 720p, which is the resolution used by the annual conference for years. It's a good compromise. 1080p takes double the bandwidth. You stand the chance of losing customers that don't have the bandwidth on their end to handle it. So 720p provides a very suitable quality, and at the same time, it's affordable on bandwidth. So above that, that square black panel, it's just an LED light source with, there's a knob there with power and volume, and not volume, power and brightness, and a knob on the other side that controls the color temperature of the light, so you can make it warm or outside. If you slide down on that image, okay, go to the app there. That's a very convenient monitor. We're looking at about a $10,000 setup on this tripod with everything that's on it. This monitor is about $1,000, but it is so nice. The little monitor you get on a camera these days, it's only 2 or 3 inches. It's just so hard to see what's going on, and it's loaded with technical data that you have to have. So a monitor like this is handy. Let's slide over. Yeah, that's a good shot right there. Okay, go to the front again, looking at the soundboard. There. Okay, I have a built-in soundboard. Again, everything is run off these 12-volt batteries, and including that light there that lights it up if I'm in the dark somewhere. That's a convenient 4-channel input soundboard. And if you slide to the left, you'll see a Sennheiser. Do a left view if you would. Left side, there, perfect. Whoops. There you go. You see that gray box? Maybe you could point that out. Yeah, that is a Sennheiser True Diversity, as it's called, receiver, like you would find in a sanctuary, working with wireless microphones on people with body packs. And that is attached to the tripod by way of Velcro. It's amazing how strong Velcro is. Of course, when I disassemble this, I take those off. I have 2 of those, one on the side you see and one on the opposite side of the tripod. And one can be used with a lavalier microphone on a pastor. an officiant, for example, doing a wedding. And the other one can be used again with another lavalier on the groom. And usually I run an omnidirectional mic, so the one on the groom will pick up the bride as well. I might have to manage the gain level as they go back and forth with their dialogue, but usually don't have to do that. If you see down in the center of the tripod there, that's my phone. And so the stream, the camera connects to that streaming encoder, little box, and the streaming encoder is streaming that out wirelessly by way of a hotspot to my phone. So the phone is set up for a hotspot, and that means it's streamed then to cellular 4G. I use Verizon. I really like Verizon a lot. Anywhere I go ahead of time, I just go online. They have a coverage map that'll show you by address. You just type in the address, and it'll show you what kind of coverage you can expect without having to drive miles the day before to check it out. Often I'll have to drive anyway just to get to case the venue. But this method is very reliable. Let me mention that streaming over Wi-Fi directly is not recommended in the live streaming community. None of my colleagues recommend it. I just wanted to mention, we were talking about the fact of using my phone as a hotspot. It is not recommended to utilize Wi-Fi. You're at very big risk to go into a venue at church or wherever and expect Wi-Fi to work. It's very unreliable. None of my colleagues in the live streaming community use it. Streaming by way of a hotspot to 4G cellular is very dependable. Now, even more so, it's dependable the Video Pro encoder, Go, which is even better yet, both of them will allow you to bond to several smartphones. So if you're in an area that might be questionable regarding adequate bandwidth, you can set the Video Pro up, or Video Go is another one. There's the Video Go. I really recommend this one. I'm using the Video Pro. It's about $700. The Pro has a lot more features. They both will allow you to bond to several smartphones, providing even greater bandwidth and greater reliability. But like I say, I have no trouble with one phone streaming HD 720p.
You shared with me about how you actually connect with two devices at once, and that your setup grabs.
Oh, you mean
access from both?
we're doing it church now with
Yeah.
with a
Like a hotspot and your phone.
Yeah, I have some. I guess we've spoken enough about the tripod setup. I have some slides, just a few, if I could show those real quick, that describes an absolute minimum setup that I got going at our church that was very successful. And we've recently added to that to allow us to do a video switch between a laptop that has the church slides and the camera. So if I could share those. These slides talk about two easy to install and inexpensive configurations. The simplest installation doesn't require any additional operators to run. Now that's an important consideration. Otherwise, you've got to recruit people to take care of the streaming, the camera. The simplest installation utilizes that Video Pro or Go. Here's the Go, for example, about $1,300. It will do Ethernet, and Ethernet cable is always the best choice if you can do it. There are issues. You've got to be sure that the Video Pro or Go is given the adequate bandwidth by the router, so that no one's going to pop up with a smartphone and take your bandwidth away from you trying to video stream to Facebook. So there's some things you've got to do behind the scenes to utilize Ethernet, but that is the best way. You can do Wi-Fi, not recommended. Hotspot works very well, and a USB modem, which is basically like streaming to a hotspot. The Video Go or Pro supports any streaming host. It also supports simulcasting to social networks. We're doing that now at church. So when we are streaming Sunday services, they are at the same time going out to Facebook. Like I mentioned earlier, this thing supports multiple device bonding. So if you're in a risky area for bandwidth, you can have it work with several phones and get even more bandwidth. I also have a unit, encoder, streaming encoder made by livestream.com. It's called a Broadcaster Pro, but it only supports their host. So I really don't recommend it. I reckon, and they're getting to be hard to locate. I think maybe they're not going to support it. The video series is much better, the Pro and the Go. You need a camera, an HD camera with an HDMI output. This model that we're using at our church is about $1,300 now. Supports up to 1080p. 720p is what we use for streaming, so it's a piece of cake for that camera. But it does, I should have mentioned, it does have a 20x zoom, and you really do want a 20x zoom. Our church is the traditional rectangular, long and not so wide, and we've got about 75 feet from the camera up to the choir at the back of the chancel. So 20x is perfect. You're going to shop for a camera, make sure it's a 20x optical.
But of course, this is for Don's setup where he's shooting from way in the back to the sanctuary. What is that called? The altar.
Yeah.
So keep that in mind. You probably wouldn't need a huge zoom for what we're trying to do right now. Just reminding everybody that this is the professional-ish setup that Don does for his business and to be able to stream from far away.
Okay, you also need a tripod, again, to not have to add more operators to the scene. We generally have a sound engineer and a computer operator that it's our office administrator. She builds the slides for Sunday, and she takes her laptop up there in the booth in the balcony and sits there and clicks them off. Well, she also works the camera on this small tabletop tripod. They run about $50, and it tucks in very nicely, easy for one of the two people that operate. A fluid camera head. This is really important. If you don't have a fluid camera head, this is the head that fits on top of that tripod, and the camera mounts to the head. This is one I set up for our church. They use. It's only about $140. Fluid head allows, when you're maneuvering the camera, it allows it to be a lot smoother and not jumping all over the place. Okay, here's the block diagram, the configuration diagram for that setup. You can see the soundboard there at the top. The only connection is a cable by way of XLR over to a mini jack, 3.5 millimeter jack on the camera. So that provides soundboard audio. So any audio that's in the venue is available to the camera. The camera's output is HDMI to that streaming encoder, the video. And I have a note there that says it must be on a static IP. Now you need to get your network administrator involved for this to ensure that the router will recognize the static IP of this encoder and guarantee at least 10 megabits up and down. And then that encoder just goes out on a cable to Ethernet your network. Pretty simple. How much are we talking total here? Well, the camera, I think I said, was about $1,300. Streaming encoders, what did I say? About $1,300 for the Go. The Pro unit is about $700. So you're looking at 13 camera, $700 for the encoder. That's $2,000, and you're up and running. But there's some other expenses, of course. You've got to have a streaming host. We use, I didn't put together some slides on this. We use livestream.com as Christina uses as well for the annual conference. Livestream.com, we're using, I think it's a $75 a month plan, which allows us to simulcast to Facebook. So you've got that every month, $75. You've got to have a streaming license. Most churches already have a CCLI license that allows them to make music copies, things like that for the choir. But a CCLI license for streaming is about, I think it's last time I checked, it's like under $100 a year. Allows you to stream church hymns and things, choir performances. It doesn't allow you to stream secular things.
Yeah, and we do have a video that goes in detail about CCLI requirements for live streaming. So be sure to visit www.dscumc.org/worship-online to watch that video where Greg Christensen from CCLI is providing great tips and I guess guidelines for how and what you need for using the streaming license. Sorry about that. But you, Don, so you had mentioned encoding software for, social media platforms offer different bells and whistles. Facebook Live, it's basically just a pass-through service. So what you're recording, you're showing in. Encoding software doesn't come into play in that situation. I saw in the chat somebody mentioned their audio can be kind of soft when they're live streaming. So if you are using encoding software, you can fix some of those things. Of course, you can also do things like put your microphone closer to you, turn up the volume on your phone or whatever it is that you're using. But that encoding software allows you to maneuver the sound some and change things like colors and add slides or go to a different camera option. So as Don mentioned, DSC UMC, we use livestream.com. We've used Sling Studio, which is an equipment and encoding software solution and streaming all in one. And so if anybody's interested in learning more about that, I can talk about that in a different video or later on today. Let's see, so Greg Nelson, who's one of our panelists, thank you for joining us, Greg. They're using a much smaller sound, it sounds like a lower tech, lower expense way of running their live streaming worship service. And their service, they are using encoding software. So Greg, can you tell us a little bit about what your church does and how it's working out for you guys?
Sure. From our 1 week of deep experience, which, I think one of the things for the folks that are participating here today or watching the video afterwards, you have to tackle this at the place where you're at. Somebody in our online Facebook forum and stuff earlier commented, if we're heading to a shelter-in-place situation, you don't want to be bringing a huge team of people to church to do this. You need to think about what does your shelter-in-place version look like too. So I think the most simple thing that a lot of folks have been talking about doing is to just, take your iPhone and hold it out here and do a video, right? And we're doing a combination of that. Our pastor's doing a daily message, a daily devotion time, same time every day to just gather people and do the thing. Just a little time to gather together. And I think that's one of the things that points out that worship and gathering is different in this day and age. One of the things we talked about at our other session, but I'll run through just a sec, prep for that before I do that. Where'd it go? Okay. Is the if you're just using a phone, have a decent microphone. A lot of people have been recommending this Shure MV88, plugs right into an iPhone. a lot of folks like Rode microphones. They also come and would, if you don't have an Apple device, but you're using another device with a mini plug, there are a lot of things that are available for that. So when we start about simple to other, I mean, you can go Facebook Live from your phone, no encoder, no software, nothing to figure out. All you have to do is add the Page app for your church's page. Don't do it from your personal Facebook account, but get the Page app on your phone, and you can just, boom, you're streaming from your church's account. So that's kind of the beginning stage. A lot of folks have been doing that. Again, get close, do something to stabilize the camera. Do not be holding it. The simple, Don talked about fluid head tripods, and I'm all for fluid head tripods and stuff, but there also are just simple little mounts that you can buy to stick on the tripod you maybe have in your closet. So it's just a little mount like this that screws on and will hold an iPhone. It's nothing special, it's $9, and it gets you going.
And
But you
if
can
I
also,
can interrupt you on that point, we, like Greg was saying, doing this, I'm struggling to say perfect, only because the tripod option is so much better. You have to think about, in
It's the
a few
first leap.
seconds. Yeah, right. It's the first leap, but even then you can set your phone down on something so that you're not carrying it, because in no time you start to get a little lower and lower, and you start to get shaky as you get tired of holding it up to talk for 40 minutes or however long it's going to be. So Greg's idea for the clip.
I got this at a conference I went to, I think, and it just holds your phone and you can adjust the angle. Anything you can do to stabilize the picture is the first step. The second step is make sure the audio is decent. The picture can be sideways or upside down or stop and go. If they can still hear you, people will stick with you. If they stop hearing you, they're going to tune you out. So those are your top things. So let me dive into what we did. We just on a whim tried a new product called Switcher Studio. Switcher Studio, here's their website. You can go to it and see. You can try it for free, but it has a logo on the screen. But that lets you test all of your equipment without any commitment. It's a subscription service that costs, I think, $31 a month. So in these times, that's a pretty reasonable expenditure to try that out. We're using Facebook Live, and it has built-in. So we talked about encoding. It has built into it the encoding to go kind of as a preset for Facebook. You just give it your account information, and it takes care of it. And it lets you choose the quality of connection you think you have. I want to echo a couple things Don said about the quality of the connection, the upload. I've used the Teradek box before. I always used it hardwired, so I was really impressed to hear his information about knowing that 4G is better than Wi-Fi. That Wi-Fi connection that you make with whatever devices you use, because the Switcher Studio relies on Wi-Fi to connect 2 or 3 different iPhones to create different camera angles. That proved to be our weak link last week. So we've set up a dedicated router for that, and then that one router connects to hardwire to our internet connection. And of course, we're dealing with being in one place, whereas Don's figured out a system that he can move from place to place as he supports multiple venues. He talked about with the hardware connection, 10 megabits upload speed. A lot of things say they're Facebook Live, and others say they're fine with 3 I've seen as a minimum. I always tell people 5 is the minimum. 10 is great. You want to do that if you can. And again, if you, things like Facebook will adjust a little bit. They'll adjust the resolution to adjust for bandwidth depending on what you're doing. So that's Switcher Studio is one option. I learned another one about an hour ago called vMix. And vMix is a little more expensive The software is not expensive, but there's more hardware involved. vMix lets you take any Windows PC, put at least one video capture card in it, and it is the studio switching. It lets you do the graphics, lets you play back videos, and it does recording and uplinking all in a software package on your Windows PC. Again, you'd want to use this with a dedicated wired connection to the PC. But that is one, I know one church tomorrow or Sunday is going to be using that for the first time in Salem, Oregon. So I'm hoping to hear back good reports from that. It allows for a 60-day free trial with complete functionality. So they'll be able to do that without any financial risk as they test that out.
Greg, can you explain a little bit about what encoding software does?
Yeah. So we're used to video, and a lot of us have a computer connected to a projector or a large screen to show the words on the screen, but that's not what we're showing now. We need to take that video signal and we need to digitize it and compress it. So the little Teradek box, the software on a computer, the software built into our iPhones for Facebook Live, they're all taking that video signal, whether it's composite video on a coaxial cable or an HDMI signal, which is already digitized. It's taking that signal with a lot of information and it's compressing it and making it smaller so that it can travel over the internet. You know, you hear people talk about Blu-ray quality versus regular older DVDs. You know, that's part of what we're doing is we're trying to figure out how to crunch that data onto a disc. So it's looking at it and it's taking, it's taking things like the background in my picture never changes. So the encoding software says, hey, I don't have to resend data that doesn't change. I'll focus on the part that's changing, like where this guy keeps moving. So one of the things you can do to help your video bandwidth, don't move your camera much. Do fixed shots, because if you didn't have time to buy that fluid head tripod, moving the camera just looks bad anyway. Get a fixed shot, lock on it, stay there. But that encoding software is preparing a video and audio signal and so that it can travel over the internet. Along the way, we see things like the video and audio getting out of sync with each other. We see the video sometimes freeze, the audio keep going. These are the problems of the internet because you've got so many pieces in the chain. You have the Wi-Fi network in your church if you're having to use that. You've got the wired network. Then you pass it off to Frontier or Comcast or somebody else. They send it on the internet. They send it to 5 other people. And then you start the process of Christina at home having Charter Cable or somebody as her provider downloading it. The router she bought for $39 on sale and the Wi-Fi connection. And oh, by the way, she's on the far end of her house from her router. So all of those things are going to affect your signal. The encoding is the first step of that to try to digitize the signal so it'll get through that whole process. We've made amazing changes in this. 20 years ago, none of this was available to us. I used to work with microwave systems to do this, and now we don't do any of that because it's all available on the internet. The technology is amazing for us. But that is the process. So there also is free software to do this. There's a program called OBS, is a free program that some people use for sending to Facebook or YouTube or any other live stream. It's gotten easier to use, but you do have to do some of those settings that Don was showing. You have to be prepared a little bit to do some of those manual, but there are lots of YouTube videos on how to do some of this stuff. YouTube is like an owner's manual for all of this because all the people who are doing it then want to prove they've done it and they make a video about what they did. So there's lots of stuff, most of it's correct, on YouTube about the different things you can do. And I guess we should say, in case somebody doesn't know it, churches, United Methodist churches are able to get a free Google Suite through through the UMC nonprofit status. Google gives that to you for free, and it includes a pro YouTube channel that allows you to do the streaming. You are still going to deal somewhat with their advertising and their issues about what they do to monitor for copyright and other things. But you can also stream to Vimeo or upload videos to Vimeo, Facebook, YouTube, or the paid live streaming services like Don was talking about, which take away a lot of the hassle because they're providing you the whole front end. They'll help you with the scheduling and stuff, I assume. I haven't actually used one of those, so you guys can talk about that a little more, about why it might be the advantage of just, particularly if you don't have a lot of tech people or something, and you want something you trust, pay the money for using Livestream or one of the other streaming services.
We use Livestream because it offers an archival service. So all of our pre-conference videos, previous annual conference videos, they're all available, archived online, and we don't have to pay for that additional. I mean, technically we're paying for it because we have a pro license, but it also provides you kind of a hold page with a countdown to when your event's going to start, and it's a pretty page that you can customize with your church's logo or whatever image you want to show. It also provides that real-time interface where you can chat with your congregation and they can type stuff in as well, and it archives all of that. What Greg's doing also allows them to switch from one camera to another, add titles on top of their video. They could switch to PowerPoint slides. You know, what we're doing through Zoom, when we switch to images, we're sharing our screen. So that's one way of doing it, but I haven't figured out how you can add titles for on top of the video that we're showing right now when people are talking. I know that you can add annotations or whatever, but it's just a matter of how advanced, how professional do you really need to get? You know, if that goes back to a message I think from yesterday, and I believe when Rob joins us, we'll talk more about the purpose of all of this, of what we're doing, keeping our audience in mind. So there's that. Yeah.
Can I show just a couple more slides that shows what we're doing now with the switcher?
As he gets that going, I'll add the OBS software does allow you to do some basic titling, really, really basic. The Switcher Studio has titling built in.
My earlier slides addressed just a very bare bones, simple installation involving the encoder, streaming encoder, a camera, and sending that out either on cable or by way of a hotspot to your hosting provider. A more advanced installation, which is what we're using now at our church, only in the last couple months. Prior to that, we were using that simple version I showed you. But now, this is a bit busy, and I wish my cursor would be visible. But if you look in the center left, there's a box called Roland V-1H Video Switcher.
Don, since you're sharing, your cursor will be visible.
Oh, okay. You see that moving around?
Yes.
Okay, great. We added this switcher, video switcher, that allows us to not only stream with this camera, but it also allows us to stream our service laptop Sunday slides. So and again, the two people that are in the booth, the sound engineer and the computer operator running the slides, she or he, the two of them can work this, I think she's doing work this video switcher. There's only knob to work. It's a handle, push it forward, pull it back, and that switches between the laptop and the camera. And here's the soundboard like we had it before. Audio from the laptop goes to the soundboard, of course, so the people in the congregation can see and hear audio from the laptop. Soundboard audio, like in the simple installation, comes into the camera. The switcher has a preview video line to a preview monitor. This is just an inexpensive 15-inch.
Don, your video froze.
He froze for me too.
Okay, so let's move along with the lighting, and we will have Dawn's slides to share afterwards. It just occurred to me that all of these files from these webinars, I'm uploading them all into a Google Drive. So you get the complete raw footage of the webinar, the chat stream text file, the Q&A file, and any of the slides that I share, that Dawn shares. Greg, if you don't mind sending me your slides as well, I'll upload all that stuff to a to a Google Drive folder. I'll also post it on the dsumc.org/website-online and the Western Jurisdiction Facebook page.
I was just showing internet searches, so I don't have slides for those, but
no problem.
People can search it themselves.
Yeah. Lighting.
So you want me to do that, or are you doing that?
I'm going to share what I'm doing, but I'd love to have you chime in with even better is da-da-da, or what you guys do. This is what I'm doing. I've got my window to the right of me, and I've got a lamp where I put a sheet on top of it just to soften it a little bit. So it just provides a nicer, softer, even look for lighting. I'm going to show you.
If you still have halogen bulbs in your lamps at home, do not put sheets over.
Oh, true.
If you switch to LED to save energy, this is not a problem because they're not as hot.
Thank you. So this is an example of bad lighting. So you can see my face is really dark on this image, and this is where I've got the camera right in front of me and the light source is behind me. You know, oftentimes we want to share like, oh, I want to give an image of what's happening outside, but maybe it's cold out or whatever. But I want people to see that my backyard or my front yard or whatever, it's so pretty. It's pretty if you're looking at it with your own eyes, but getting recorded this way, a lot of it gets washed out. You're going to get washed out. So it's not the greatest. So in general, for any type of filming, there's a thing called three-point lighting. So you've got your key light, which for me is my lamp, and then you've got your fill light, which is the window for me. And then I'm not using a backlight, but if I really wanted to provide a really, dare I say, beautiful worship-like, a more intimate video, I'd have a backlight that's either, sometimes they call it a hair light, you know, so then you can see a little bit more of me. It provides a little bit of distance between the background and myself. And
yeah, it really separates you from the background is what it does.
Yeah, and then occasionally some people, for some filming, you could experiment with also providing a light for your background. That adds even more of that really nice worshipy professional look. Do you want to add anything to that, Greg?
No, I'll just echo that. I mean, I had to do the same thing. I had to close my shades because it's a beautiful sunny day here, but this is not a good picture. And for those of us, you know, who are trying to deal with depression by having sun in our face, you know, it's like, I gotta turn off the lights. But again, the simplest thing I saw in one other note was face the window. Turn your computer so you're facing the window. If I faced the window completely, I'd be more evenly lit. But that facing the window, particularly if there's a white shade over it, so you have a broad, flat white light source, is good. It may be the time for some folks to maybe get rid of that first web camera that they bought 8 years ago and spend the money on an HD web camera. That will also be a factor for you too.
Yeah.
So be thinking about that. Overhead lighting, I mean, a lot of people, overhead lighting or light that's behind you, it's not flattering. So find something. I really like your just throw a sheet over it kind of idea to help soften the light. That's a key thing.
Yeah. So let's look at some of our questions, and then we'll go on to online giving and other resources that are available. Yay, Don's back with us.
Looks like we're getting Don. So let's just talk a little bit more. I think we covered this, but a couple of you asked. So I'm going to answer. Beth had asked about not streaming directly, I think, when Don was talking about that. Welcome back, Don. We're going to talk a little bit of bandwidth. So I think we covered that. You don't want to go to someone else's Wi-Fi and trust it. I had one church that I often would be asked to host conference Zoom meetings and stuff, and it would drop out every 20 minutes. And I would call their tech support people, and they go, everything's fine. So Wi-Fi just kind of, somebody else's Wi-Fi is never to be trusted, is sort of the rule for most of us. I think Don and Christina would agree. But the 4G, when you're using the cell phone like he was talking about, or if you're in your own church's Wi-Fi and you don't have a bunch of people there, or you've got a dedicated network, that's the way to get around some of that. You're suggesting that we be hardwired in. Hardwired in is always the best. Hardwired to Ethernet is always best, but you also need to know what service you're buying. Unfortunately, a lot of the cable companies are selling better, faster service to home customers than they are to commercial customers. Comcast in our area, their standard business package is 200, they say 200 megabits, yay, but it's only 20 megabits up. So if we had a lot of people in the building doing stuff, that does not provide us what we need to do live streaming. I can get 200 down and up in my house for less than the commercial cost. And then someone asked about what do you need to be recording right in front of the pulpit? Any device will do that. If you're just doing a one-person show, a GoPro camera or an iPhone camera or something, particularly if you're just recording it to upload later, those will work. You do need to remember that iPhones by default have a wide angle camera. So when you get a little bit too close, you're going to notice, man, is my nose really that big? And that's an aberration of the lens on the camera. If you've got the iPhone 11 that has the portrait camera, it may be a little better, but I'm not in video mode. I don't think that camera kicks in. So, you know, but you also want to be close because you want the sound to be good. So that's sort of the trade-off. And people are used to that kind of up close look when you're doing things. But the question is, why are you doing it at the pulpit if you're the only one in the room? When we think about this is a different kind of thing, why aren't you sitting in your office, or why aren't you sitting outside in the courtyard of your church if it's not a noisy place? Think about how to do new things, not recreate worship. And there's in our Facebook chat, there's been a couple of discussions about that. This is something different. So recreating the worship experience people are used to, we might open Beth's mic or somebody else's. I saw the bishop on the list of participants here too. We could always invite him. The theology of, is this the same thing as worship, is a whole conversation that's going on outside of this technical meeting. But you don't have to recreate worship. What you want to recreate is community.
Amen. Thank you, Greg. So speaking of theology and what we're doing here, how it's different, I'm going to share my screen again because we're going to talk a little bit, and Beth had asked about the Facebook giving button. So we're going to talk about some different online giving options. And the reason why I said speaking of theology is really just that this webinar is more, it's the equipment, the software, it's the nitty gritty. You know, we're trying to help people to do what they need to do. But there will be a community conversation next week on Friday, where specifically about online giving or giving, and it talks more about the theology behind it. This is just the software and tech to do it. It's not the theology side of it. All right, so these top 3 items are 3 of what I consider the most popular online giving, but I could be way off. There might be some better options out there. And they're really easy to use. There's no real fee in that. You don't have to buy a subscription, or and that's depending on if you're using the basic, you know, online giving. They do have some fees if you're going to use like an app where you can do other stuff with it. I can't remember what the other options are with them, but all 3 of them have free options. I included there how much the fees are per transaction. The nice thing about the Tithely is that they do include a cover the fee option. when a customer or your congregant is about to give, they've got that option right in front of them. So it's, I don't know, I think that it's more likely that it's going to be less cost from the church's side if the giving is, if during the giving they see that option to, oh yeah, and I'll cover the fee. I don't want my church to have to pay for my blessing to them. So I've got those links there, and I will include them in the chat so you can click to find out more. But you could just Google givelefi.com or tithely.com or paypal.com. You'll go ahead.
Christina, Julie also mentioned PushPay is another option.
Yes. So
And,
yeah.
do you know about that one?
Yeah, so PushPay, that's one of the things that I've got down here. I know I've got the links really tiny, but that's just because I was trying to fit. I'm really breaking the rules here, people. When you have slides, you should not have this much text on them. But just to get this stuff out there to you guys, that's why I did it this way. So for donor engagement, PushPay is a great option. They're doing, and this is my little cue to talk about the community conversation next week, which is talking about things like what PushPay does. They won't be covering PushPay, I don't think, but basically what it does is it helps you get the donor or the giver, the congregant, whatever, down this path of more of generosity. They give for one thing, and then PushPay helps the administrator or the pastor, whoever it is that's administering it, see what's the next step now. If this person gave at this rate, what's a good recommendation to do to keep them either giving or to increase their giving, that sort of thing. I feel like it's more about the theology behind giving and not just here's my one-time gift or my reoccurring gift or whatever. All right, so the Facebook donate button. It's actually not that complicated. There's a couple things you can do. One, if you're doing it straight through Facebook, because Facebook has their own, it's basically like Gively or Tithely or any of these, you can do that directly through Facebook. And to do that, you have to verify your organization first. So I've got the link for that I'll put in the chat. And then you have to verify that you are actually a nonprofit group. And for those of you that don't know, the entire United Methodist Church, all of our churches are covered by the one group ruling from the IRS. And if you need documentation for that, which you probably will to verify that you are a nonprofit, you can request a letter stating that your church specifically is covered by the group ruling by visiting umcgroup.ruling.org. I'll put the link in there as well. And so once you've done that through Facebook, then there's just the add button. It's super easy. So then at this point, when you add the button, you'll either add it and it's going to include the Facebook giving, or you add a button and include your church's existing, like Tithely, Gively, I don't know how to say that. Whatever it is that your church is using, you add that link for online giving onto your Facebook button. Anybody want to?
Christina?
Yeah.
It shows something here. We have an app that our office administrator, Katie, put up that is available on our phone. Can you see that okay right there?
Yeah.
Okay. This is an app. This is an Android phone. I believe it works on iOS as well. And you can see, you can, with your smartphone, even in the pew, and we even have a slide Sunday morning that says to the effect, donate using your phone app. You just tap on any one of these, donate, and we're using PushPay, so that brings up PushPay. But from here, you can also get to our live stream that we do every Sunday. Kind of hard to do and look at this too. Like Christina said, we're using livestream.com as well. And here's an example of all of our Sunday posts. And I think we've got a couple hundred, 300 posts on there. Anyway, I just wanted to show you that app that I think is very helpful with a simple donate button. People in the pew can drag out their phone. They forgot to bring their envelope, hit the donate button and make a contribution. And we have a guest login and Wi-Fi thread so they can utilize that with their phones. Just wanted to mention that.
And Christina, one of our chat members, Bob, asked about if these all give receipts. And I'm sure that most of them give some sort of an email acknowledgement right away. The systems where you're more signed up for, like Tithely or PushPay, I would think the church gets the information they need for their annual reporting or pledge tracking. Something like a Facebook Give button is probably going to be less information forwarded to the church and less tracked. So that's one of the differences there.
But with those, I don't know if yes, I think I did include the Facebook stuff in there. Good. You know, click on those links and you'll be able to see, it does show you what, like, let's say the Facebook giving button, if you're doing it through Facebook, it does keep track of, oh, Greg Nelson just donated amount last week. So it shows you things like that. I believe it even graphs giving for you. As far as a receipt, it definitely, it's going to email. To be able to have a Facebook page, you have to have an email. And to be able to add the donation stuff and take advantage of these other nonprofit bells and whistles, there's some verification that needs to happen. And some of that includes getting a piece of mail from Facebook with a code that then you have to go back in and go into your account to say, yes, I received it. Because Facebook's trying to verify that you really do exist. You really are a real person. And so then they allow you to do more stuff. So they actually have a lot of information from the page administrator. Again, this is a page, not a profile. So for the page administrator, there's quite a, it's not a lot of work, but there are some steps that need to be taken. You can't just start a page and start taking money. You have to verify who you are.
And many of the more church-based systems, I think, also are going to say, make this a recurring gift, and someone can just set up their giving that way. So I think there's a reason to be doing more than one thing, because when something special comes up and you want to be able to put a Facebook and donate to a special Sunday giving or something like that, those Facebook buttons can help generate that extra. But also having some of those more solid permanent things with the link on your website allow people to automate their pledge giving, which a lot of churches were doing before this, but now is so critical in this day and age.
It's going to be different for different websites out there. I was wondering if you wanted to see just a real basic, here's the little icons to look for, a couple different options for adding a button on your website. We might as well. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen again. On our conference website, we use WordPress, and we use the plugin called Divi, and that allows us to do a lot of customization. I mean, we've got crazy buttons popping up all over the place because we need to do a lot of, like right now, we need how to worship online right on the homepage. So I'll show you, there's two ways for Divi. You can either enable the visual builder, so you're building on the front end, or you can build on the back end, and that's where you don't see all the pictures and stuff. You just see I guess the text and the framework for it. So let's go ahead and enable the visual builder. And then I'll show you the back end. Okay, so I can see there's different sections in my website because these little boxes pop up and each color is a different type of section. So anywhere that you have a plus, that means you can add to it there. But even here I could click, and now I've got all sorts of options there as well. So I'm only going to show you the one bit about how to add a button. So let's say I wanted to add a button right in between these two segments. I'd press the plus sign and I choose how many columns do I want for this row. I only want one column. And then, and this is through Divi, then I can either create a button, or what these are, where you've got a color behind it or a graphic behind it, those are a call to action but it works like a button as well. But if all I wanted was a button, click on that, and then I get these options. I can change what the button call to action is. So in this one, it's click here, but it could be donate. And then I put in here what my link is going to be to donate, whatever that may be. Being careful, oops. So ideally you wouldn't type in your link, you copy it so that you've got it perfect. Because if you do HTTP like that and actually you have a secured site, then it should be HTTPS. If you just do the HTTP, depending on how your domain is set up, you're going to have some issues there. So go to your online giving page, copy the URL and paste it here. And then you choose if you want that button to open up that giving page on a new tab or in the same window as, so it replaces what they're looking at. You decide whatever one you want. And the admin table, label, that's just what you see so that you know when you're working on this stuff, what's what. So let's do that. Yeah.
Christina, are you working in the WordPress backend here?
Yes, this is WordPress with the Divi plugin installed. So here I've got my donate button. I can customize the way it looks, where it's going to sit on this page just by clicking again on the little settings gear and then going to design. I've got all sorts of options from alignment to customizing what the button's going to look like. Maybe let's go red. Why not? For the text color. And the background, let's go this really bright lime green, just to make sure everybody sees it. And I do the check mark, and now there it is. My online.
Aren't these plugins wonderful?
Yeah, they're the best. So,
and I think if users are using Weebly or Squarespace or other websites that include builder functions, it's not going to be exactly like that, but a lot of them are using this kind of object structure where you say, what type of object is it? And then you change its characteristics.
Yep. Now I'm going to show a different way because a lot of our pages, so you can see here again, I use the Divi
Rob
plugin.
is on, Christina, when you're ready.
Rob, awesome. Okay, Rob, I'm just going to show one last thing and then we're going to hand it over to Rob. So what a lot of churches might see when they're editing their website is something that looks more like this. And this is like a WYSIWYG, what you see is what you get editor. So to add a button, if this is what you see on your website when you're editing your website, to add a button, you want to look for this little stack, the blue and green or something like that. You click there, you paste that URL for giving there. You can choose if you want it to be a big or small button, the color of the button, and what you want it to say, donate. Oops, that's to look up a different page. Yeah. Donate, and then again, if you want it to open up to a new window or replace what you have, I'm gonna click OK. So you see this crazy stuff, but then if we actually looked at it live, it would look like the same type of green giving button or whatever color. Yeah, we did pick green. So that's what that looks like, and then you would click on center if you want it to be centered. All right, so now we have our other panelists. Let me stop sharing.
So Rob's there, but he may not be in a presenter mode. Can you toggle that for him?
Yeah, let's see, where is he? Rob Reinders, or promote to panelists, there he is. Rob Reinders will be rejoining the webinar as a panelist, so he'll pop in just a little bit. Let's see, I promoted him. So maybe Rob, you might need to log out and log back in. I'm gonna let you talk. Oh, yay, there he is.
Hello?
Hello, Rob.
Hey, it worked.
Welcome.
How's it going?
Pretty good. I gave the preface that when you joined us, that you would talk a little bit about the theology or what we need to keep in front of us as we utilize this technology to get worship online and upgrade to get even fancier or whatever, where we're at. You had some really good insight about that, some considerations during this time of social distancing and changing the way worship looks. Can you share the group about that, please?
Sure. And I think I'm only on audio. Are you able to, you don't have to show my face, but I did do my hair for the group. So I'm not totally in my pajamas.
Do you
So-
have in your lower left, Rob, do you have a video button if you move your mouse down?
I do not. What's the video button that and I literally just came off another Zoom call onto this Zoom call, and it's just giving me the audio, not the video option.
So I'm going to check on our Zoom webinar to see, maybe you logged in with a different email address than what I registered you as.
Okay.
Because I promoted you
yeah.
from attendee. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. I have 17 different email addresses, so that's entirely possible. But that's not what you asked me to talk about. So yeah, I've just been thinking a lot. So I'm a strategy guy, and I try to think of everything in the context of a larger strategy or basically purpose. Like, what's God calling us to do? What's the vision? And then what are the steps we take to achieve that vision? Knowing full well that not everything goes the way we think it's going to go, and we have to stop and retool and rethink, like, maybe we didn't discern that clearly enough. So with that caveat in mind, I'm noticing a lot of anxiety around content, and in a rush to, we got to do online, which is absolutely true. But also, I want to keep in mind that let's not elevate content above simple pastoral care, right? So how are we keeping in touch with people, and how are we responding to the needs in the community? I think there's a lot of really good church content out there right now. We're being able to see churches from around the world streaming that we may not have been able to see before, and we can point people to that as we're doing pastoral care stuff if we're not great at the technology stuff. And what was my other thought, Christina? Oh, and then two, let's not overthink this as well. I've been outreaching to some folks to get even better at like, okay, what are some packages we could put together to help people do live streaming and whatnot. But if you sort of look at what's happening in New York and California, things are just shutting down even more and more. And I think within the next few days, we're all going to be at a shelter at home situation. And so really it's going to come down to, if we want to be doing anything, it's going to be pastors maybe doing messages or teachings or something, I got promoted. Yeah. Did anyone hear me for the last 5 minutes, or was I okay? Good.
Yeah, we heard it all.
Okay. So yeah, I would be thinking, what's the simplest way to be connecting with people online? If you were putting together a $5,000, pro production rig, maybe that's a great long-term strategy. But for right now, it's just about how can I simply be communicating with folks, and how are we providing care to folks?
So we did cover a lot of different bits and pieces of equipment and software at all sorts of different levels. Can you tell us a little bit about what you do, like as your profession? I mean, you're a pastor, but are you also, I don't know how that works, if you can be a pastor and a deacon? Doesn't.
How much time do we have?
Yeah,
So,
let's not go in there.
So deacons are fully ordained clergy, just like elders are. We have different calls, different roles, and when it's working the best, we're working hand in hand with one another, combining our gifts to serve our churches, and deacons are always about connecting the church to the world and the world to the church. So I think we're in prime deacon time right now. And deacons are technically not supposed to be called pastor. You're a deacon, you're a reverend or a minister. I think there's something coming up in General Conference, if that ever happens again, to perhaps change that. But that's for another webinar. I founded a nonprofit called 1703, a faith collaborative, and we do two things. We help churches find their purpose and connect with their neighbors, and we also launch new experimental faith communities. And there's a deeper background story of how that nonprofit was launched. But the way we help churches find purpose, connect to their neighbors, is a lot of times through technology, especially in this day and age. But so we can do anything from helping you create that Facebook business page and get that donate button going, to helping you decide what kind of website you may or may not need, your church experience, but really how are you connecting, and how can you do a better job connecting your congregation as neighbors, but also connecting to your neighbors in your actual neighborhood.
Perfect. So in that help, number one, would you be available to helping others that are on this Zoom call?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what we're here for. And I have a guy, his name's also Rob, and he's very talented in many of these areas. He's launching one of our new experimental faith communities, but he's also very good at marketing, communications, and so really anything people need, we just want to help.
So if a church, I'm assuming everybody that's logged in right now, it's because they're wanting to try something new. They're trying to learn about how to do this or that. What are some recommendations? So anybody that feels like that's on this webinar and feels like that was really cool, I want to try to do the Facebook giving button, or I want to try to embed that worship service that I'm recording on my computer. How do I put that on my website? Any of that kind of stuff. They're ready to move forward, but a little bit afraid or not technologically savvy, but they know this is what I want. How would they connect with you to help them get there?
My phone number is 480-710-7008, or you can email me at rob@1703.faith.
Would you add that to the chat, please?
Sure.
Thank you. And then let's see, we've got one Q&A pending. Let's see, it says, Richa Ralston says, we use Access ACS, part of ACS Technologies, which has an easy to use phone or computer platform. Our congregation can update their personal information, etc., as well as set up their auto giving. Oh, okay, so this is more about the online giving conversation that we had earlier. Oh, Greg, sorry, you were going to answer that one. You're good? Okay.
I was just clicking it for you. So.
Oh, thank you. So if anyone has some options, like thank you, Richa, for sharing that about ACS Technologies. A couple of questions that I keep getting are, one, are there phone tree solutions that are out there, or like a mass texting solution that's out there, like software-wise? And how can my church podcast? Does anybody have some insights on that?
I can tell you a little about podcasting. Rob maybe has other experience as well. First is, what is a podcast? Where a lot of us are used to being on the receiving end. A podcast is an audio file that you loaded somewhere and somebody's downloading somewhere. Okay, so let's be simple about it. There's a product called, or a website called Podbean, Podbean, that is set up to quick and easy, either simple or complex. So if you don't know where to upload your podcast to or wherever, Podbean is a site. You want to think, how do I capture the file? Well, I've done it a couple of ways. You can capture directly into a computer using a program called Audacity. It's a free program, a little complicated to use, but there's lots of YouTube videos about how to do that. Another church I know just took out of their mixer board in their audio, they just plugged it into a little mini recorder that had a USB drive on it. And then they use that to go to Audacity, which allows you to trim it for just the sermon. I think for podcasting, be thinking about the sermon. For one thing, you eliminate a lot of copyright challenges with that. And then if you load it to Podbean, Podbean has things you can add to your church's website. So that's kind of your private podcasting version. A lot of us that are using more complicated or using prefab website tools, Clover Sites, Weebly, and others may have audio upload things built into them. So you can put the audio file directly in your website. And then there's a process for registering that site with something like iTunes. And that's the piece I don't know about. Rob maybe does, I'm not sure. If so, I'll pass off to him. I know we've done it at our church, but somebody else did it.
Yeah, a lot of the ones like Podbean and Buzzsprout, actually just about any of the hosting platforms, I think are automatically doing it for you right now. And you just have to fill out a form, and it'll submit it to not just Apple, but most of the major podcasting outlets.
So there's a delay while they do that approval process and stuff. But then when that happens, if you can then have people go in and subscribe. I have my pastor's sermon shows up in my Apple Podcasts feed every week as soon as we get it uploaded to the website. And then there's an automatic process. Once we upload it to the website, the Apple server is kind of looking for a new file, and it's automagic.
Yeah. And I haven't messed around with them too much yet, but there's more and more just straight up smartphone app podcasting solutions where you can you download the app, you register, and then you can record straight from your phone. If you're just looking for a quick and simple solution, straight from your phone and hit upload, and it takes care of it for you. And I can look into some of those as
so
well.
Those would be daily message kind of podcasts.
Yeah.
Okay, guys, I've got quite a few questions that I'm going to try to, let's do a rapid fire Q&A. So unmute your mics and just jump in and answer if you know the answer. All right, so first one is, can one record a video directly from one's PC to upload to social media, Facebook, YouTube, etc.? What about adding music or songs to it?
Adding pre-recorded music is usually a licensing violation. The music that you licensed and performed during the live streamed worship is, if it's church-based music covered by their catalog, would be covered by a CCLI live streaming license, not the standard license.
Okay.
But pre-recorded things by another artist are something you want to stay away from in a live stream situation. They're okay in church, but not in live stream.
So can we sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, something that we do at First Church Mesa, if we are including a performance that includes a secular piece of music or whatever, the sound engineer will mute the sound out to the streaming encoder for that performance. Now, at a previous church, I set up their system. They had sign language groups that would perform against secular music, and the same thing there. The video would be provided, but the audio would be silenced. So you do have to watch copyright very closely. At least if you're going to stream, you do want the CCLI streaming license, and that allows you to stream worship material.
The CCS, Copyright Clearance Service, I think it is, which is actually now owned by the same company as CCLI, does offer a broader license that includes the commercial ASCAP, BMI, CSCAM collections. So that's an option too, if that's a big part of your ministry. But I think we only answered half your question.
Yeah, well, it's asking if you can record directly onto your computer and upload. So the answer is yes.
The answer is yes, and that gives you that gives you more certainty, because you can say, yeah, we got the take we wanted. You can even record onto your phone. You know, you can if you're just going to do a daily message, you can record it on your phone, on your phone app. There's probably, if it's an iPhone for sure, there's an editor. You can trim the ends or cut out the moment when the dog walked through or whatever. And then you can upload that to YouTube or video or to your church's website, depending on its capabilities.
And audience, if you need step-by-step how to do that, please request that in the chat, and we'll make sure we've got another webinar on that down the road. All right, next question.
Christine?
Oh,
Yeah.
I was gonna. Oh, go ahead, Don.
Yeah, let me mention, as a matter of fact, for this coming Sunday service, we did a pre-record where everyone couldn't attend at one time, so it was done in piece part in various clips, and it turned out to be 3 or 4 clips. And we wanted to make sure that, and mind you, this is going to look just like it was the real service Sunday. So we wanted to include the ability to switch between slides from the laptop and the camera. So that meant we had to actually stream, at least that's the method we chose. So we streamed in draft mode to our livestream.com account, each of those pieces. And then I came home and downloaded those MP4 files and did the post edit on them with Adobe Premiere, and then uploaded that as a complete service, triggered to schedule to go off at 9 o'clock Sunday morning, to be posted 9 o'clock Sunday morning. So you can do all those things. There's tends to be a lot of work behind the scenes, but in the end, no one will know the difference.
Thanks. Rob, did you want to add something?
I was going to say for the lo-fi solution, for when you're not going to be able to get into your buildings to do live streams, or if you just don't have that capability, I think you could grab YouTube links of music. You could create a playlist basically of, if you want to get real fancy and embed it in a blog post on your website, you could, if you had your pre-recorded message, you could, you can embed those videos from YouTube, because if they're on YouTube, usually it's from the artist or the record company, and it's the copyright's usually fine, because YouTube's pretty hardcore about taking it down if it's not supposed to be up there. So you could create a little worship experience with those videos and then insert in your own video. You're not editing it all together, but you could create a little playlist in effect, if that makes sense.
Fantastic.
I think you don't want to capture those in your recording, but you certainly can share a link to them.
Exactly. Yeah.
There's the key. Because like you say, the person who uploaded it, they're responsible for the copyright, whether they had it or not.
Yes.
But that doesn't give you a license to use.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's interesting. I've discovered in streaming and video recording weddings, often the bride and groom would like certain music to be dubbed in the background when you create what's called a montage, a real short, quick video. And it's proprietary, copyrighted music. But YouTube has changed its approach regarding copyright. I can go ahead and put those up on YouTube in public domain, and as long as the copyright holder, distributor, agrees, then YouTube will allow my video to be monetized, where the distributor of the music receives the funds from the monetization. Now, not all, I've discovered at least one so far, copyright holder didn't want to go along with that, so I got gigged on that and had to take it down. But generally, that's not much of an issue anymore.
Okay.
It does mean that their ads will pop up on your video, though.
Oh, yeah.
So I had a question about how much is livestream.com. I'm going to include the link on the chat so that you guys can click and research which option you want. But I've got another question for the panelists. Should I have a worship page on my website or leave everything on Facebook or YouTube?
Now, you absolutely want all this on your website too. Wherever people go looking for you, you want them to find this. So you probably in these times want to be thinking about changing your website to say, not necessarily a page labeled worship, but engagement. How are we engaging during this time? And it should have those links to the videos. So someone in your church or another church says, I missed worship and I want to go do something. You want them to be able to go back and get a link, whether it's a link to the Facebook video, because you can embed the Facebook video in your page. You can embed the YouTube link in your page. So think of your website as not necessarily where people start, but it's always your repository. So if someone does go looking, or if you want to promote something in Facebook or Twitter and say, hey, did you miss worship? Here's where you want to send them to a link on your website.
Anyone else have
Bob's
something to
nodding,
add?
so that's good.
I was going to say if the easiest thing you could do is if in the meantime, while you're developing a site or a page or whatever, is you can just create a menu tab that links directly to your Facebook page.
Right.
Great idea. So what's the easiest startup equipment? And I'm going to paste in the chat a link to a step-by-step gear recommendations. But we talked earlier about, just using your phone and maybe not holding it, but different things you could do for a tripod. If you had to narrow it down to the top 3 things that you need to have as far as gear for the lowest tech possible, using things that you have, or you just need to buy 1 or 2 things, what are those 3 things? Is that a bottle opener?
No, it's the little tripod adapter that I showed earlier.
Yeah. Okay.
I
So you guys are way smarter than I am.
I think you're talking at a minimum a way to capture the video. That's a camera of some sort or another. And what I showed earlier was a professional Canon that you can pick up for about $1,300. If you just have a household everyday 1080p video camcorder, odds are if it has HDMI output, that'll work. And you just route that into you can run into a computer and have the computer have software that will do the encoding for you, or you can use one of those video encoder boxes for $700 for the pro version. And so for depending on what you have available, you can be up and running pretty quick. The additional thing are the costs, the $100 a year for the CCLI streaming license, and at a minimum, I think it's $45 a month for a low-end livestream.com account. We just upgraded to the premium account, I think it's called, $75 a month, because that's the only way we could begin to do simulcasting to Facebook. And we think that's a real plus to be able to go out to Facebook as well.
So if you're going to include music, Don just mentioned the first thing you need is the licensing. We always want to tell people that we need to be doing this in a legal way. These are extraordinary times, but that doesn't change that responsibility. Stabilizing the video with an adapter. You can do the Facebook thing for free with the phone. You just need to create a page. You can do all that in an hour or 2. Rob or I could walk anybody through that process if they're uncomfortable with it. But like Don said, if you've got your old, Nikon camera that you take, it has an SD card on it, you could record the video ahead of time, and then you can upload that into a YouTube account or a Facebook account. Facebook does not have to be Facebook Live. You can upload a prefab video into the page, and that gives you a chance to look at it, to put a description. By the way, let me throw something I just thought of. After you've done a Facebook Live, you can go back and edit the video and put in the description stuff. Put in the scripture citation. Make sure the title's good so that it's there. You can do that ahead of time, but if you didn't do it ahead of time, go back and do it afterwards.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right.
And I mean, I mean, and two, other than a phone, like you can do just what we're doing right now. You can do it a laptop and with your webcam.
Some churches are doing their worship with Zoom.
Yep.
So that's also an option. The standard license is limited to 100 participants. And the webinar style, like we're here doing today, is an additional fee, right, Christina?
Yeah, it is.
But if you do that, Zoom is offering some discounts. Pacific Northwest Conference managed to work a real deal for their group, but so $15 a month is the basic, or 19, I guess now is the basic license, but there are ways to discount that. And if you've got a small or medium-sized church, 80 people are probably going to show up on a Zoom call like this, and you can record it and post it back to your website.
And then there's also things like TechSoup.org, which is what the conference uses to get our discount. But it doesn't just provide a discount for Zoom. It provides a discount on equipment, whether it's new or refurbished, trainings for things like how to do streaming or how to do marketing on Facebook, which we mentioned the marketing piece. So if you're interested in learning more about marketing on Facebook, and I'm talking about, there's a lot of us doing boosting. What's the difference between boosting a post and actually buying an ad through Facebook to target people that have never heard of you? It's different. Boosting does not reach people that haven't already engaged with your church's Facebook page. So things like that, if you want to learn about that, or if you know all sorts of great information about it, please add that in the chat so we can coordinate and set up another webinar on something like that. We're pretty close to 20 minutes before we end, but I think I'm feeling like we've got a lot of information out. We could end early. What I want to remind you guys as we prepare to end this webinar, and I'm not saying panelists, you can't share anymore, you might have more great content to share, is check out things like UMC, resourceumc.org. They're putting together some incredible information, and some of it has already been there, but they're condensing it and putting it in kind of a step-by-step how-to. There's also, let's see here, I think, did I share it already? Facebook streaming resources for worship. Camber, what's the cst.edu? What school is that? Claremont, thank you. Claremont put together some great resources. It's a little bit off topic, but it is information that you need about worship, spiritual connection, emotional health. So we talked a little bit about that earlier. A phenomenal resource. You guys got to check this one out. It's from Fellowship of United Methodists in Music and Worship Arts. A lot of the stuff that we talked about today is on that link. Check it out. Did it go up or not? Yes, it did. It's a Google Doc it's a live collaborative document where if you have information to share, you can get your bits added to it. But it goes from everything from licensing to equipment to shared liturgy, all sorts of stuff. It's available on that Google Doc. So I encourage you guys to check that out. Final reminder, we are recording this webinar. It is going to be uploaded to the Desert Southwest Conference YouTube channel. If you want to get an email notification for when this video and the upcoming webinars are up and ready to go, subscribe to youtube.com/DSC Communications, and you'll get that email notification. Otherwise, whenever you want to look up what's the latest that Desert Southwest Conference or the Western Jurisdiction has on resources like this, for the Desert Southwest Conference, you can go to www.dscumc.org/worship-online. And for the Western Jurisdiction, we are developing a page that's kind of a collaborative between the Western Jurisdiction conferences, pulling together our resources onto a new page, including these webinars. We don't have that ready yet, so that's coming up, but we will put a notice about it in the Western Jurisdiction Facebook page for online worship. And I think I even have that as a slide. I'm going to share my desktop real quick and get back to the slides. Is it this first one? No, there it is. Facebook.com/groups/online worship. That's the Western Jurisdiction closed worship Facebook group for clergy and laity that are exploring this topic of moving worship online. That's it. Oh, we've got one more chat mention.
Now, just some of us are sharing our contact information if folks want to follow up with
Oh,
us.
perfect. Thank you.
Also want to shout out to Beth Rambakur, who's been following along in chat and adding notes and stuff for us. Thank you, Beth.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Yay, Beth.
Yay. So there are more conversations like this already in the queue for next week. Next week, every one of our, these are going to be a little bit different. They're not going to be panel conversations like this. Anybody that joins in is going to be able to join the conversation. So we will see you, we will hear you. And those are for 1 hour next week, every day at 10 a.m. To see the lineup, again, go to that dscumc.org/worship online.
What's the method for subscribing to get notices of uploads?
Conference communications. Oh, there it is. Oh,
So
look.
here, if I hit this subscribe button, I'll get all the new things that Desert Southwest puts up.
Yeah, so you can see those last videos there. Those are snippets from the previous webinars cut up into
Hey, that's
specific
me.
topics. Yep, there he is. All right, thank you everybody for joining us.